few speakers about some careers in the sciences, a dietitian and a pharmacist. So you're interested in any one of those avenues, they're going to give a little presentation, and then you'll have an opportunity to ask some questions about education, about anything having to do with that profession. Okay? All right, go ahead, guys.
Hi everyone, I'm Bridget Baldwin. I'm the volunteer coordinator over at Robert Wood Johnson University Hospital, Rahway. I was in contact with the Township of Woodbridge, and they asked us to come out and say a few things in local high school, so we thought, why not get involved in our community? So first we're going to start with our dietitian, Christina Fresky. She's the one who you have handouts for, okay?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I love to talk about my profession because honestly it has grown in leaps and bounds in the past few years. This is actually my second career. I started out in business, and after time I realized that there was so much more I wanted to do, and I wanted to try to get into the medical community and follow something that I had a passion for, and that was nutrition. I had no idea how difficult and competitive it was to become a dietitian. So that's something I really would like to explain to you today. First of all, there's only a few colleges in the state that offer a didactic program that will then lead to the internship that allows you to sit for the exam to become a registered dietitian. Now, there is a difference between a nutritionist and a registered dietitian. A nutritionist, there is no real credential for. There's a lot of online programs, there's a lot of people who can just call themselves nutritionists, but they don't have an ethics board that they stand before. I have a credential. I have letters that follow my name. And what I do in my career has everything to do with whether or not I can keep those letters after my name. A nutritionist does not. I went to Rutgers University. I got my degree there. Then I went to Montclair University where I went through my internship. And that was the hands-on part of my education. And I learned so much there about patient care, documentation, the legality, the ethics of what you have to do as a dietitian. One of the things I do in my career a lot is I go out and I do talks like this. And when I always open a talk, the first thing I do is I say to them, being a dietitian, I promise you that everything I tell you is based in science. Especially when it comes to nutrition, there is so much misinformation out there right now. Because of the internet and because of the information, it's a lot easier for people to share their thoughts. And because nutrition is such a developing science, there's a lot of bad information out there too. So that's one of the things I do a lot in my job, is just try to clarify for people what's real science and what's a fad, what's a trend, and what's really happening in science, building up the career in the field of nutrition. So again, I went through an internship, and after I completed the internship, I had to sit for an exam. And then after passing that exam, that's when I could start using the credential registered dietitian. I have to keep up credits, and I also do have that ethics board I stand before. At any point in time, if someone questions the information I've given them, or if I'm not representing my profession appropriately, that's something that I might have to stand before and explain myself about. And that makes me feel good, because a hospital would never hire somebody who just said they were a nutritionist. They want to know what you've been educated in and what you stand for in terms of the guidance you're going to give your patients. I see people with so many different disease states, and I'm sure, as you know, diabetes is on the rise. And one of the biggest ways to help control diabetes is what people eat. So I speak with a lot of different people about their diet habits. You know, a lot of what goes into what you eat is cultural, it's comfort, it's just your lifestyle. And you guys are super busy. It's probably hard for you to have a regular eating schedule. These are the things I have to know about somebody before we can really come up with a plan that works best for them, so that their food and their nutrition really supports their lifestyle and their health needs. So that's a lot of what I do. I work in the clinical setting at Rahway Hospital, so I see people who are in for emergency situations, but I also see people in an outpatient setting. So people who might just be trying to lose weight, or people who've had a heart attack and want to have more education on how to eat right so that they keep their hearts strong. I also work at the RWJ Fitness and Wellness Center in Scotch Plains, so there I work with a lot of people who are trying to just live better for themselves. And I support what they do in their exercise and in all the things they're trying to do to improve their quality of life. And that's what a lot of food does. It has a lot to do with just how well you feel. And a lot of people are learning that more and more, and they're trying to do the best they can with the foods they choose to learn how to eat very well, so they feel better. So those are a lot of the roles that I play in Rahway Hospital, and that's the thing that's great about my career too. It's taken on a lot of different roles. In a lot of corporate settings, they've started to have wellness programs for their employees, where they want a dietitian to head it up, so that they can give talks about how to eat well, that they really know the science of how to be well, to help their employees be healthier. There's just nutritional coaching. There's a lot in school settings as well, where dietitians are coming in again to teach kids how to be well, work in the kitchen setting to make sure that the meals that are provided for you are healthy. So again, dietitians have started to really branch out and not just be in the hospital anymore. A lot of companies are hiring them. A lot of different pharmaceutical companies are hiring dietitians, again, to support. If they have a diabetes drug, they want to have a dietitian on staff to help them. Okay, you're taking this medication, now let's get all the other parts of your life under good control so that this medicine helps you the best it can. So the field has blossomed. It's really a great place to be right now. We have a lot of opportunity to bring this career in a lot of different directions. So how much time do I have? I'm doing okay, right? Plenty. Okay. All right, I gave you 2 handouts. One of the things, being a nutrition geek like I am, that I'm very excited about is the nutrition facts label is changing. And I love to teach to it because a lot of the changes that are happening to the label really indicate how the science of nutrition has changed. The label that you see on most products, the older label, it was made in the 90s. And when it was made in the 90s, we were going through a lot of the low-fat craze. So that's why on the old label you'll see calories from fat. With newer science, we're realizing how important fat is in our diet. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble vitamin. Without fat in our body, we can't hold on to vitamin D well. It is also very important for our cell membranes. They're all made out of fat. It's very important for our bowel health. It's very important for our hormone synthesis. So eating good fats is actually very important, and we're realizing that more and more. That's why you keep hearing, eat your avocados. They're a great source of good fats. Your nuts, your seeds, olive oil, great sources of the very good fats. Now, on the flip side, we still do have to watch the saturated and the trans fats. Now, the thing, again, about science, and you guys all being scientists, science has tried to do a lot to improve the quality of our food supply. And sometimes it works for the better to help us out, and sometimes it doesn't. Case in point is trans fats. What scientists did was they took liquid fat. And because liquid fat tends to go rancid pretty quickly, they broke open the molecules. And they put in hydrogen to make it a saturated fat, so that it went from a liquid to a solid. It wouldn't go rancid as fast, and it was more easily transported. But in doing that, in changing the structure of the molecule of the fat, our bodies didn't know how to identify it as well. And because that happened, whenever we introduce confusion to our bodies tend to reject it. And that's what happened with trans fats. That's why when you look at a label today, just about every product that you see will have a 0 next to that trans fat number, because we're trying really hard to get them out of our food supply. Now, this is where the label is helpful, but sometimes you got to dig a little bit deeper. That trans fat number of 0 is a whole number. So some companies still do have a little bit of trans fats in their foods, but they register it at 0.4, so they don't have to round it up to 1. Always look at the ingredient list. If you see anything in the ingredient list that says partially hydrogenated, that's what they did. They hydrogenated that oil. They broke open the molecules and they put in hydrogen. So that's what that phrase means. So always check your ingredient list. And when you're looking at an ingredient list, it's always listed by what's in it the most to what's in it the least. So if you're looking at sugars, and you see sugars in like the first 5 ingredients, you know a lot of that product is sugar. So the nutrition facts and label alongside the ingredient list does a lot to really give you an idea of the quality of the foods that you're buying. And that's what it's there for. Not for elimination of foods, but for choice. So when you're looking at something, you can go, oh, this is a better choice for me. Because I'm one of the first people. I am not about elimination. All foods fit in. All foods serve a different purpose for us, either socially or culturally or comfort-wise. But if you can use the label to make a better choice, you're doing better by yourselves. Another thing that's great about the new label is there's going to be a new line item for added sugars. This is great because right now it's just total sugars. So if you're looking at something like a yogurt where you've got naturally occurring milk sugars and fruit sugars, you don't know how much refined sugar was put in that product on top of it. Now you're going to know. And honestly, I've seen some of the new labels on things like yogurts. The numbers are really staggering of how much added sugar has been put into our products that we didn't know until now. The thing that's good about this change too is a lot of companies have started to change their ingredients knowing that they have to report the added sugars. There's a few yogurt brands that have gone to no added sugar varieties. So all that's in there is the naturally occurring milk sugars and whatever fruit they've put in. They've put in no refined sugar on top of it. A lot of bread companies, instead of using all the refined sugars, because they don't want to report that high number either, are starting to use dates, monk fruit, other fruit-based sweeteners in our breads, so again, that number can be lower. So in a lot of ways, these changes to label have forced manufacturers to improve the quality of what they're putting on the shelves. So that's a great thing. What's true today and will be true in the future, especially using that added sugars value, use the daily value percentage. 5% is considered low, 20% is considered high. So if you're looking at a product and you see that the added sugars is 20%, because they don't want it to be more than 10% of your calories for the day. That's how low they want that added sugars to be. You'll know that that's a very high source of added sugar. Now you see right now, the total sugars line does not have a daily value percentage. And the reason for that is I want you to have fruit. Fruit is so important for fiber, vitamins, minerals, that I don't want you to ever feel like you need to limit the sugars that come from that. So in that way, they will never say there's a limit on how much fruit is in that product or make you feel as though you shouldn't eat the fruit. I always want you to eat fruit. And the more variety, the better, because each color offers a different nutrient profile. So that's why you always hear, eat your leafy greens. Absolutely. They are powerhouses. The darker the color of the fruits and vegetables, the higher the nutrients. So that's why blueberries, incredibly powerful. And the more you eat a variety of them all, the more you're mixing up the vitamins and minerals you're giving your body to keep yourself strong. So that's why I say never eat one of anything. You know, don't eat spinach every single day. Spinach is fabulous. Mix it up. Get everything. And the more you do that, the more your whole diet is going to keep you healthy and strong. And that's what I want for you, because that's how your body's expecting nutrients. It's not expecting it from a pill or a supplement or something like that, something synthetic. It's expecting it from your food. So the more you can choose to eat all these different foods in good variety, the healthier you're going to be from the foods that you eat. Right. Do you want to speak? Do you want to ask me any questions before I turn it over to pharmacy?
Well, why don't we ask any questions if we have about the topic? I have a question.
Yes.
In talking about the sugar from fruit and
Yes.
the added sugars,
Yes.
is there a way or is there a difference that our body sees the naturally occurring fruit versus the refined?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. And the reason is, just like I was saying, that's how your body expects it.
Yeah.
When you put refined sugar in, it goes into your system very fast.
Okay.
And that's why it causes sugar spikes. That's why when people say, oh, I'm crashing, I had too much sugar, that's truly what's happening. The sugar goes in and out, in and out. When you eat fruit, all that's there, the fiber from the skins, everything that you're eating alongside the sugar is helping slow down the sugar in your system. So it is how your body is expecting to get that. And sugar is very important. It is our body's first fuel. So you do need it. But when it's refined, it goes in very fast. And if you don't burn it, it turns to fat. So in that way, fruit and milk is the way your body thinks it should be getting the sugar, not in a refined, simple way. Yes?
What about frozen foods? Are they just as good for us?
Absolutely. What's great about frozen fruit is it's picked perfect and then frozen to be shipped to market for you. A lot of times it doesn't defrost great, but I do have a hierarchy of how I like fruits and veggies. If you can do local and seasonal, that's the best, because A lot of times when things are out of season and they're coming from very far away, they have to be picked underripe to make the trip here. And in being picked underripe, they weren't given the chance to stay on the plant to get all the nutrients it could have from the plant and from the soil. So when things are out of season, it is better to get them frozen for that reason. They're picked absolutely perfect, so they come to you perfect. And then very last is canned, because that's the most processed of all the fruits. So yes, getting frozen fruit is a great way to still get a variety of fruits in your diet. That's a great question. Thank you. All right, I'm staying here. If you think of any questions, please, I'll be happy to talk after the fact. So thank you.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Priyanka. I'm a pharmacist. So for my presentation, I just wanted to kind of go over what pharmacy is, what my career path was, so you get a good idea of it, and try to explain all the different career paths available to a pharmacist. Can you guys hear me in the back? Sometimes I'm really quiet when I talk. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. So for me, I'll just tell you why I decided to go into pharmacy school. When I was in high school, I guess you guys are juniors, seniors, sophomores. As a junior, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do in college. I was still deciding until like pretty much last minute when I was looking at colleges, and I was like, you know what? I like chemistry, I like biology, let me go into a career that involves both of those. And a couple of my friends are actually going into pharmacy school, and I was like, I don't really want to be a retail pharmacist like the ones you see at CVS or Rite Aid, but there's more than just that to pharmacy, and that's what I learned when I started looking into schools. So when I applied to pharmacy school, I applied to University of the Sciences in Philadelphia. So it's a small pharmacy school in Philly, which I really enjoyed. And then during my time there, I kind of figured out what pharmacy was all about. I learned the different pathways I wanted to take. And after school, when I finished, graduated and everything, I decided to do a residency. And that's kind of what led me to my current career, which is an internal medicine pharmacist. So that's basically, I practice all sorts of medicine at the hospital. I talk to doctors, patients, other healthcare professionals, and teach them about the medications, drugs. So I get a lot of access to all sorts of different people, which keeps my job very interesting. So I'll kind of go over pharmacy school to begin with, because there's two different pathways you can take. So the first one, right out of school, you're not 100% sure what you guys want to do. I know it's really confusing as a high school student to know exactly what you want to be when you grow up. So the first career path is that you can go to a non-pharmacy school, finish a degree in biology, chemistry, pretty much anything you want. And then during that time, during college, if you decide you want to go ahead and do pharmacy, you can apply to pharmacy school. So you would take a PCAT, so that's kind of like the SAT to get into college, but it's the pharmacy exam to get into a pharmacy school. And then you would go into a pharmacy program. The other option is also to do what I did, which is go into a direct pharmacy school, where you just have 6 years and you're done. So the other path is 8 years, which is, it's not that long, really, if you think about it, but 6 years is faster. So what I did was I just did the direct 6 years because I knew what I wanted to do in terms of being a pharmacist. And then, well, all you'd have to do in the first 2 years is really maintain a GPA. So as long as the school has a certain GPA cutoff that you meet, you're going to go directly into that pharmacy program. And in other schools, if you want to transfer after 2 years, you still have that option. For example, Rutgers, they do allow some students to transfer into their 6-year program after 2 years of the initial classes. You would just have to take that pre-exam. But for what I did, which is a 6-year program, I didn't have to take any exams, just had to maintain my GPA, and I was good to go. So that made it really nice for me. And then in terms of what pharmacy school is like, in your first 2 years or your first 4 years, whichever pathway you take, it's just prerequisite classes. So very similar to what you guys are doing, chemistry, biology. You guys are in AP Chem, AP Bio. Those are some classes you could take your AP tests and AP out of. I chose not to do that because, first of all, I wanted to get that second exposure since pharmacy is very heavily into chemistry, biology. I wanted to know it really well. Plus, you get to work with your classmates, and it's a little bit easier. It gets easier in college if you work hard in high school. Trust me, I know it was really hard in AP Chem. I wasn't doing so great, and in college I was like, yeah, I'm getting A's. So it really worked out for me. The other classes we took, we had gym class, so pretty basic stuff, really easy. They just taught you how to use the gym equipment if you don't know how to use it. We also took orgo, or organic chemistry. That was a pretty hard class, not going to lie. Physics, if you guys like physics, we also did a little bit of that. And then we also had some writing classes, research classes, just to learn how to use the appropriate tools, because Google does not always tell you the right stuff, if you had noticed at all. You have to look at the appropriate materials, make sure you get the right sources, something that's up to date and something that can actually be used in a court of law, pretty much. And then after that, my second half of school, or the next 3 years of didactic classes, it was mainly focused on pharmacy. So pharmacotherapy is the biggest class you'll take, and it goes through those 3 years of school. It basically means how the drug works, how the body works with the drug, how everything about that drug kind of works. And it's a really difficult class. So you go through different things like cardiology, you'll go through infectious diseases, psychiatry, and learn about each different medication for that disease state and how it treats the person. And with those classes, we also get labs. So it's not like these labs here where you're working on different chemicals. It's more like you work with patient cases. So they'll give you an example of a patient that comes into a hospital and they have all sorts of problems. You have to learn how to work up that patient, go through their chart, all of their medical history, and be able to make recommendations. So it's kind of preparing us to go on to residency and rotations after school. Some of the other classes that we did were compounding classes. So that was interesting because some of you guys might think of the compounding pharmacist as what a pharmacist does. So we do learn how to do that. We make things like suppositories, we make all sorts of IV chemicals just to learn how to do those things because those are the fundamentals of pharmacy. And then the last and most important thing I thought in pharmacy school was your introductory experiences. So you spend about 2 to 3 weeks at a hospital or at a community pharmacy just to learn what it's all about. You'll get to shadow a preceptor, which is the pharmacist that is basically in charge of you, teaching you everything, and you get to learn how to work with patients. It's really scary the first time if you haven't ever worked with a patient because you're not sure if you're going to do the best you can for them, because I know if you guys are going into a career that involves patient care, you just want to do what's best for that patient. So just learning how to do everything was most challenging for me probably. And then the most fun thing was your 4th year of pharmacy school. So before you graduate, all you get to do is work with patients, go on rotations. So I wanted to tell you guys what I did because it was really different than a lot of people did. The first rotation I picked was a prison rotation. So I went to jail for a month, which was really cool actually. So in the prison hospital, what I basically did was I helped serve the inmates that were there. It was a large state prison in New Jersey, and all they really needed help was with learning about their medications. So they're like everybody else. They still take medications, they have health problems, and they need help understanding those things. So I would go talk one-on-one with the inmates, obviously with the presence of an officer, but I was safe there. And I also helped make sure that we were dosing some of their medications correctly. Have you guys ever heard of Coumadin or warfarin? It's basically a blood thinner, and it's very, very important that we monitor patients that are on this medication as well as their diets because everything can affect that drug. So in my time at that facility, I would go counsel the patients, let them know what they should be eating, how they should be checking their levels, and making sure that their drug level was appropriate. So I would change their dose and kind of help them keep that range. So that was really interesting for me, working with those patients. And from that rotation, I learned that I was really interested in psychiatry as well. So that was actually one of my next rotations. I worked at a psychiatric facility. So I was in the hospital working with psychiatric patients. A lot of them, it's really, really interesting to see when someone comes acutely ill with schizophrenia, depression, how sick they are, and how much you really want to help them. So in that 1 week or 2 week time frame that they're in the hospital, you see that really vast improvement, which makes you feel good that you did a good job for the patient, and it makes you realize the importance of actually being on that healthcare team, helping these patients out. I worked with a doctor in that team. I worked with social worker, case manager. So all of these people kind of came together to help that one patient because a transition from the hospital to the real world is really, really tricky sometimes. Some people don't have housing, they don't have food, they don't have a job. So it's really hard for some of these people to actually get on their feet after the hospital, where the hospital gives you everything you need for the time you're there. So I thought that that was a really eye-opening experience, and I wanted more experience in that as well moving forward. So I actually did another rotation that was similar to that, but I work with the Indian Health Service. Are you guys familiar with what that is? So remember Native Americans, how we kind of took their land a long time ago? Now they're on reservations, and a lot of them have a lot of poor health care, a lot of health issues just because of the traumatic states that we put them through. So what we do is the government has these programs where pharmacists, doctors, pretty much any healthcare provider can go work on those reservations and give back to the community. So I lived in New Mexico for a month. There's nothing in New Mexico where those reservations are. It's really tricky because you're basically in the middle of nowhere, no cell phone service, nothing. It's difficult for these people to get access to good health care, so we go to them and take care of them for them. So the hospital was a tiny little place, pretty much half the size of your high school, I would say. And we worked with patients. They would come in, ask for medications. We would teach them about their medications. And what they had was poor health literacy. Do you guys know what poor health literacy is? Basically, if I said adverse drug reaction to you, do you know what that means? So working as a pharmacist, you have to learn how to speak to patients and speak at a 5th grade level, because some people do not know anything beyond that. They don't have good education, and therefore we need to make sure, as a pharmacist or any healthcare provider, we're teaching them to the most basic level possible. So instead of adverse drug reactions, if I said side effects, would that make a little bit more sense to you guys? So we kind of have to tone it down, make sure that they're understanding everything very well, and make sure that they are able to take their medications without having problems. So that was also another eye-opening experience for me. Then I worked with an infectious diseases doctor. Have you guys seen infectious diseases, chickenpox, smallpox, all that stuff in the news? So I got to work with patients that had those disease states. Not necessarily all of them, because they are very rare. They do come about nowadays. But I got to see patients with different foot infections. We recently had a patient in our hospital that had a worm in their brain because they ate undercooked pork. So it's really interesting to see how to take care of those patients as well, because it's not common. And you get to learn a lot about the body and about the bug and the organism. So that was fun for me. Not fun for the patient, just an interesting life experience for me. Then I also worked at a community pharmacy. So as you guys know, like retail pharmacies, so CVS, Rite Aid, it is busy in those pharmacies, so you have to be on your feet pretty much constantly all day. There's patients coming in and out. They need to know about their medications. You have to deal with insurance companies. It's a very tough job, so the people that do those jobs, I admire them because they are relentless and they keep going and going and going. But that wasn't really the career for me, because I wanted more one-on-one time with patients and working with them for more than a couple of minutes, which is all the retail pharmacists unfortunately get right now. I also worked at a doctor's office. So you guys probably have gone to your doctor's offices to get checkups or whatever. There are patients that are on like 15 to 20 medications, and if you could imagine, that's a lot of things to remember to take at consistent times during the day. So I would work with those patients at the doctor's office and try to make a plan for them, make a sheet for them, give them the tools they needed to remember to take their medications. And then I would follow up with phone calls, see how they were doing, and then the doctor would also see the patient after I saw them. I would let them know, hey, maybe they're not taking these drugs, so the doctor can kind of figure out the plan from there. So it was a very good healthcare team in that environment. So other options that I didn't really do, but people have gone into pharmaceutical industry. You guys have heard of Merck, Pfizer, Novartis, all those companies. There are pharmacists there as well, and they work a lot with different disease states like oncology, also psychiatry, infectious disease. They work on helping the drug company formulate the best package insert, and which is basically like a Bible about that one drug, tells you everything. Maybe go through the clinical trials, making sure that the patients are treated appropriately during those trials, all sorts of things to make sure that the pharma company is doing what they can to let the consumer know what they're taking and that it's safe for the consumer. Another one that I haven't chosen or never chose was poison control. So have you guys ever seen that poison control number with the skull, crossbones? So there are pharmacists and other healthcare providers working on those lines. Basically, if a person comes into a hospital, maybe they overdosed, they took something that they shouldn't have taken, we would call them first just to see what their recommendation was for us, because in those situations you kind of get stressed, you don't know what you're doing, you need someone that's the expert and calm, and then they can give you the best recommendation for the patient. So those are
pharmacists on the other end of the phone.
Yeah,
Poison control.
not always. There's doctor,
Okay.
all sorts of different providers, but a pharmacist could be there.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Good.
So those are the different options that you do have as your rotations for school. Once you graduate school, you do need to take 2 licensure exams, so the studying never stops, guys, trust me. The first one I had to take was my state law exam. Law is very difficult, but I passed it. And then the other one was just the general licensing exam, and that's just so you could be a registered pharmacist and practice pharmacy in your state or in your country. And then after you get those exams done, you can pretty much do whatever you want after pharmacy school. You could work for a company, you could work for a retail pharmacy, you could go do residency, which is what I did, and I'm going to go over that because I know that the best. You can, if you do industry though, there are options if you want to further your career path. They allow you to do fellowships. So fellowship is basically you work hand in hand with that pharma company in order to increase your skills, make you more marketable even after you finish that fellowship. So that also gives you more career opportunities in that company where you don't have to go into an entry-level position. You can go in as a higher level post completion of that residency or fellowship. But for me, I just wanted to do residency. I didn't think I knew enough after school, and I wanted to learn more. So when I did my residency, I was at a hospital in Belleville, so up north in Jersey, and I learned all sorts of things. I went to different codes. You guys have learned CPR in gym class? So we learned CPR. I actually did it on patients. It's not the same as doing it on a dummy. It's really interesting and scary in those situations, so learning how to react and how to respond. I also worked in psych unit again. I also worked with different infectious diseases. It was almost like I did a repeat of my last year of school, but I had to learn everything on my own and do it on my own because now I was the pharmacist helping the patients myself. So that makes the stakes a little bit higher because you have to take care of the patient on your license. And then I also did a little bit of training. I moved to Texas, actually. For about 6 months, I was working at the VA in Texas. I was working with psych patients there. So I was actually the provider. It's like when you go to a doctor's office, you see the doctor, they treat you, give you meds, you go home. I was that person that they would see. So at the VA, which is the Veterans Administration, pharmacists have the ability to practice as a provider. So we could prescribe drugs, we could see patients, we could make changes, which was really interesting for me to do. And also, I wanted to come back to Jersey, that's why I came back. So that was the main reason I left my job there, came back to Jersey. And that brings me back here to, my gosh, my throat's like dry, sorry. It brings me back here to Rahway Hospital. So in terms of finishing college, you have the opportunity to either start working, go into residency, go into fellowship. There's all sorts of different things. And you can also get board certification. So I actually have my board certification in pharmacotherapy. It just means I know drugs. I know drugs really well. So in order to maintain that, I have to take ongoing continuing education credits every year. It's about 150 continuing education credits. It's a lot, but I have to do it over a 7-year period. So again, like I said, learning never stops. You have to keep going, especially if you go into healthcare, because everything changes. Every year a new drug comes out, new studies, new trials, all sorts of things happen where you have to keep on top of it so you can give patients the best care. And then you can also practice in a specialty area. So there are cardiology pharmacists, infectious disease pharmacists, pharmacists that are working in the Air Force. There are pharmacists that are working in ambulatory care like doctor's offices. You can pretty much do anything. And I think that's the really cool thing about pharmacy, which some people don't realize. So if you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Yes?
How many drugs did you need to learn?
Everything. I can't even tell you how many drugs I know because in school when you learn about the drugs, you don't just learn this drug. You don't learn like acetaminophen. You'll learn pain. So you learn all drugs for pain. You learn how all of those drugs work. And it's not broken up by drug. It's just by disease state. So I can't tell you. Hundreds, thousands, I'm not sure. A lot.
But you can speak about a cancer treatment versus the drug for a diabetes
Right,
treatment.
right,
All of them,
right.
all encompassing.
Yes.
You
Yes.
mentioned a lot of opportunities that the pharmacists have. Are there significant salary differences?
Yeah. So if you choose to do additional training after school like I did, so a residency or fellowship, you do take a pretty big pay cut. Take like a 60% pay cut. It's pretty significant, but you do it because you want to learn. You don't do it because you want to earn less money. But in terms of when you just graduate and you go straight to a career, you do make a significant amount of money. It is a livable salary. You do have loans to pay off, but you can make it work. So I would say between the other careers after training, it's pretty similar. Some people make a lot more if they choose to do a specialty like cardiology. Really difficult field. Oncology, also difficult. Transplant is another one I didn't mention, very difficult. Those people do make a little bit more because the stakes are a little bit higher. You need more training, you need more learning and knowledge. Any other questions? Oh, sorry.
Do you have to take like a science like all years of high school in order to like actually become?
I wouldn't say so. You learn all of those sciences again in those first 2 years of school. So like I said, if you don't do an AP test, an AP out of the class, you'd still take that class. You'd still take chem, bio, physics, orgo, biochem. You still get all that experience. So you don't necessarily need that to get into a school.
What exactly do you need to know for the PCAT? What kind of a test is that?
So I never took it, but it's a lot of, it's math, so you have to learn your pharmaceutical calculations, which is something you learn in the prerequisites.
Okay.
There's also lots of books, so like the SAT, you get a lot of prep materials that you could use and study with those to take the test. You'd learn your basic chemistry, biology, the basics before going into pharmacy school. So it's, I guess if you've taken AP test, it's like that, except a little bit different, where they're going to structure the questions differently. I don't know if you guys get K-type questions. So do you know what a K-type question is? Those are fun. So basically it'll say A, B, C, D, and then those aren't the choices you get to pick. It'll say A and B, both A and C, A, B, C, D, not A or B, and you have to pick from those to get your answer. So they make it a little bit trickier to answer the question correctly, but those are the types of questions you'll see moving forward in college and on PCATs. Yes?
How competitive are like the college programs for like pharmacy?
Yeah, it depends, I think, because I went out of state, but I know Rutgers is a little bit more competitive getting in-state program. You get that lower tuition, and I didn't get into Rutgers for pharmacy school, but I didn't want to go there, so it was fine. I wanted to get outside of New Jersey, get that exposure, but it really depends. As long as you have I'm not sure what the GPA requirements anymore are, but as long as you maintain a solid GPA, you guys are able to graduate. I don't see a problem. It's not all about grades, too. Just keep that in mind. Make sure you kind of flourish and go out and study, not just study, do other things, activities. I did marching band. I was a band geek. That was my thing I did in high school. And then, do I have other band geeks in here? Yeah, so I didn't just study and stay in my room all day. And even in college, I really recommend you guys get out there, go join a club. I did student government. I did band there, too. So I think it's about you being a well-rounded person, not so much the grades. Yes?
Do you know what percentage of the individuals who take the PCAT actually pass it the first time?
Ugh, I don't off the top of my head, no. But I would say, I don't want to guess. I don't know the answer. I'll have to look that up. That's what you should always say. If you don't know the answer, you'll look it up and get back to the person. Don't ever guess in healthcare, guys. Don't do it. You'll get in trouble. Anything else? Yes?
After finishing pharmacy school, are there any other steps you need to take before applying to a company, or can you just like jump straight into it?
So that's a good question. She was asking if you can go straight to a company, if you have to take any other steps. I would recommend during pharmacy school, if you do want to go the industry route and not do a fellowship, I would do an internship. So a lot of companies offer summer internships where you could learn about the company and then they already know you. And the best way to get your foot in the door is to already get your foot in the door. So getting an internship, it's low paying, but you get exposure to all those really key people that are going to be looking at your CV when you apply anyway. And if they've seen you, if you've worked with them, then they know, hey, that girl did really well when she was my intern. I want her back as a full-timer. So I would kind of do that. Always try to work part-time because that'll get you in full-time 100%, as long as you do a good job. You had a question too?
Yeah. When you were like the psych,
Yeah.
what were you like doing over there?
So when I was practicing in the VA or in the hospital psychiatric rotation?
Hospital.
Okay, so when I was at the psychiatric facility, I was in the psych unit. I know psychiatric is a complicated word. I was in the psych unit. I was working with the patients there. So we would do counseling with each patient. So every member of the team, the doctor, the nurse, practitioner, the case manager, social worker, would all sit in a room. We'd have the patient come in. They would kind of tell us how they're doing, what they want with their care, and we would make recommendations with the doctor to make their treatment plan moving forward. What I also did was a medication education group. So it was at certain times every day where the pharmacist would come. Whoever wanted to come here, the pharmacist would come into the group room and we would just have a discussion, talk about medications, go over whatever the patients really wanted to talk about. Anything else? if anyone has any more questions for me, I brought some business cards if you guys want to email me, and if you're seriously considering a career in pharmacy, I could go over that more with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know no one's dying to be a volunteer coordinator in this room. But those were two really interesting presentations. And there was a few points about studying hard and getting involved in different activities. And as a volunteer coordinator, I can tell you that I see a lot of teenagers, in fact one here now, who come through to me as a volunteer, and I see them going off to school and growing from a freshman to seniors and knowing exactly what they want to do. When they come in, they are clueless. They don't know what they want to do with their life, which at 16 or 14, you shouldn't really have to do that. But as a senior graduating, I can tell you the most successful ones, they do have extracurriculars. They do have something in forms of leadership, something that they're doing at school or in the community where they've shown leadership. So just keep that in mind. How many people here are seniors? Where are you guys going? Rutgers?
Rutgers.
What are you going for?
Pre-med ed.
And who else was a senior? Someone over here. Where are you going?
Middlesex.
For what?
Biology.
What do you want to do?
Become a surgeon.
Hi. Any other seniors? There's somebody over here. Seniors?
These are all freshmen.
Freshmen. Oh, so well, I know what she wants. Who? Were you a pharmacist?
No.
Pre-med.
Seton Hall for the sensory medical program.
Medical. Seton Hall. And young man, are you? Is he a senior?
Samaj, yeah. Samaj is a senior.
I'm going to stay-at-home university.
Okay. Okay. Let me tell you, I know that the pressure's on for, an Ivy League school, or the pressure's on for Rutgers. You want to go to White, you want to go to big school, but please don't think that there's any shame in going to stay-home university or community college or anything like that. You're going to get there no matter which path you take. You're going to get there in the end. So if you do Middlesex County College or stay-home university, or if you decide to skip a year, you're going to get there in the end. And in the end, do you really want to have, your parents are probably going to kill me, but do you really want to have like tons and tons of debt? Or do you want to start small, get all those prereqs under your belt, and then go on to Rutgers or Seton Hall or Columbia? We have a nurse now who started as a high school student with me, and now she is an RN in our hospital, and she was accepted to Columbia to finish with her master's in nursing. And even then, as an adult who's working as a nurse, she's having trouble getting the financial aid for Columbia. So it just goes to show you she's continuing her education, but it's still always a struggle. And don't be afraid to just go a little smaller. She even looked into joining the Army as a nurse. She looked into joining the military just to get that bill in order to pay for her schooling. So there's always that struggle.
I have a question. Are you then the coordinator for all the freshmen in the room that may be looking or interested in some type of community service or volunteer hours?
I am.
If you were interested in going to a place like Robert Wood Johnson and doing any volunteer work, you're the person that they would get in contact
I'm the
with.
person.
And sort of, how does that work? How would they get in contact with
So
you?
I have my business cards. If you can just email me or give me a call. Right now we do have a little bit of a waiting list. It is a little long, but that you're a freshman, that's a good thing because then you have the time to waste waiting for me. We do place you during the summer is our best time to come in. You get placed in a particular department, like the pharmacy or food services. We also place you in physical therapy if anybody's interested in physical therapy. We don't start our high school students in very clinical areas. Unfortunately, you can't start doing brain surgery until you're a surgeon. So that surgeon over there can do our brain surgery later on. But right away, we just put you in places that we really do need your help, but it is community service hours. And then once you do start school again, like in the fall, you come back after school if you can. If you can't, because you're in other extracurricular activities, which you should be. We understand that. We're very flexible. But yeah, study hard, and it's always a learning process. I have a question for you. Do you have any CEUs? Do you have to do continuing education?
Yes. Every 5 years we have to have 75 credits logged.
What does that mean? Can you explain what a CEU is?
Continuing education. You can get it in lots of different ways, and I'm sure you can for pharmacy too. Every year, the New Jersey Dietetic Association has an annual meeting. And at that meeting, there'll be poster displays about different research. There'll be different speakers who come to talk. And by attending that session, you can receive credits. Other ways to get credits are every month I get a journal from my academy. If I go out online and take tests about the materials that I read, I can get credits for that. If I did independent research, if I went, and studied in my hospital diabetes and blood sugar control and did a study on it, I could submit that for credits. So there's lots of different ways you can go about getting credits. But again, like we're saying, you've got to stay current. Our sciences are changing. And this is the way that our academies know that we're staying on top of the field and making sure that we're as up to date as possible, so we're providing the best information possible.
So once you graduate, that's not it.
Never the end. Never the end. I learn things all the time. Like I said, especially nutrition, it's evolving constantly. And the different diets that are coming out and why people are gravitating towards those. And is there good science behind it or not? Because, like I said, that's my responsibility to you. So that if you come to me and say, I'm on this diet, is this healthy? I'd like to be able to tell you for certain, well, this is the good parts of it and this is stuff you'd be careful of. So it's important to me that I always give you the best information possible too. And like I said, even with the label, 30 years ago, we were thinking one way about fats. Today we're thinking a different way about fats. So that's why it's very important for me to always know that I'm telling you what's current. Because things change, science changes. We learn so much more about the body. It's such a complex system, and we tend to like to look at things in pieces. And that's really hard to do. You really have to look at the person and the body on a whole. And in trying to do that, it's very difficult. The more we learn, the more we figure things out, like I told you about trans fats. Science thought they were doing a good thing by us. But at the end of the day, it caused confusion in our bodies. So we try, we learn, we test, we reevaluate, and then we come out and say, okay, this works and this doesn't. But we've got to stay on top of that so we get the best information possible.